מה אהבתי תורתך? אחרי זה אנחנו יורדים להפסקה של 2 דקות, ממשיכים בחפלה בעזרת השם. איפה הכפיים לאבא שלי? אהבתי תורתך, אהבתי תורתך, כל היום היא שיחתי. אהבתי תורתך, אהבתי תורתך, כל היום היא שיחתי. אוי תחכמני מצוותך, כי לעולם היא לי. ואויביי תחכמני מצוותך, כי לעולם היא לי. אהבתי תורתך,
Welcome back to another class on Amot shel Halacha. Enu l'Kadosh Baruch Hu be'olam ela arba'a Amot shel Halacha bilvad. We have completed in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, that's Siman 271 Halacha 1. We completed the whole Halacha with the Mishnah Berurah Be'ezrat Hashem B'leneder. Instead of doing the whole review after we finish the whole Siman, we're going to go and do the review after every single halakha. So this way it can still be fresh in our mind. Today we're going to do the first part, the review part 1 of the class. It's going to speak about the mitzvot of the Kiddush b'Shabbat, doing the Kiddush on Shabbat. So Rav David Yosef Shlita in his Sefer, he opens up and he says, Mitzvot aseh min Torah, there is a positive commandment from the Torah, likadesh et yom HaShabbat b'dvarim, to sanctify the day of Shabbat with words. Shenimar, like the pasuk says in Shemot and Perik, Chav, pasuk, Chet, Zechor et yom HaShabbat likadsho, remember the day of Shabbat to sanctify it. So we see over here that there is a positive commandment from the Torah to sanctify the day of Shabbat with words. Nevertheless, continues Rav David and he says, how do you do the sanctification? V'tzarich shetiyah zechira al hayayin. You need to remember the day of Shabbat on the wine. Why specifically on the wine? Sharei matzinu lashon zechira b'yayin, because we find the expression of the word zichir, of remembering, in regards to wine. Shenimar, like it says in Hosea, Perik Yudalet Pasuk Chet, Zechru ki yain Lebanon, remember like the Lebanon wine. V'chen emar, and so too it says in Shir HaShirim Perik Aleph Pasuk Daled, Nizchira dodecha miyain, that we loved you, Hashem, we remember your love more than wine. Rabotai is pasukim in the Torah, is expressions, but what do we see over here? We see over here that when it says Zechro ki yain levanon, so we see over here, let's do like this. We see over here the word Zechro ki yain, and we see over here Nizchira dodecha miyain. In both of these verses from Tanakh, what do we see? That the word zechir, the word to remember, is next to the word yain. Over here also, zechira, to remember, is next to the word yain. So now that we know that we have a comparison, in the same verse you have the word zachor, and then you also have in the same verse yain, this that we say that you have to remember the day of Shabbat to sanctify it. How do we know it has to be on wine? Because it says in Hosea Zochreu ki yain levanon, and it says in Shir Shirim, Nazchira dodecha miyain. So we learn from these two verses that the zechir, that this remembering of Shabbat, it must be specifically done on wine. Continues Rav David Yosef Shlitani says, Olodat kama merabotena rishonim va'achronim. According to the opinion of some earlier rabbis and some later rabbis, Hakidush al hayayin b'Shabbat hu mitzvat aseh min Torah. This kiddush that we do on the wine on Shabbat, some rabbis, which are the earlier authorities or the later authorities, they want to learn that this kiddush that we do on the wine is a positive commandment from the Torah. And against them, that kama merabotenu rishonim v'achronim shemin Torah yotzim yedei chovot mitzvot kiddush b'dvarim av b'lo kiddush al hayayin. Against those opinions, you have other early authorities and later authorities that they hold that from the Torah, in order to fulfill your obligation in the commandment of saying the Kiddush, it's enough to be able to do it with words. Av below Kiddush al hayayin, even without doing the Kiddush on a cup of wine. So it comes out over here that you have Rishonim and Achronim that learn that the Kiddush on the wine is a positive commandment from the Torah, so it must be done on the wine. Against them, you have other Rishonim and Achronim that learn, no, from the Torah, a person fulfills his obligation of sanctifying the day of Shabbat with words alone, even if he's not doing it on wine. According to them, so why do we do the Kiddush on the wine? If from the Torah I fulfill my obligation of Kiddush, of sanctifying the day of Shabbat with words alone, so why am I doing it on the wine when I come home on Friday night? So Rav David Yosef Shlita says, the rabbis of blessed memory instituted that the Kiddush has to be on the wine. And they relied this, that the Kiddush has to be on the wine, which is only from the rabbis. They relied it because it says in the pasuk, Zechru ki yain levanon, you should remember it like the Lebanon wine. V'yesh mahem shekatvu, and you have some rabbis that wrote, Shemina Torah yotzim yedei chovot mitzvot kiddush b'tefillah. Some rabbis want to learn that a person fulfills obligation of the commandment of sanctifying the day of Shabbat with words in the tefillah prayer, in the Shemona Esrei of Aravit on Shabbat. When? Kesheomer birkat mikadesh Shabbat. When you're saying the blessing of mikadesh Shabbat. So let's go see this for a second. According to this poskim, they want to learn Rabotai, this I cannot highlight because I'm right now on Safari, so I'm not going to be able to highlight this. I'll just do my best to try to get it up here. Okay. When we start in Shemona Esrei, after we say Ata Kadosh v'Shemcha Kadosh Kadosh b'chol yom, Yihalalu Chasel Baruch Ata Hashem Hakel Kadosh. Once we say that, we begin Ata Kidashta. Once you say Ata Kidashta, then you have Vayichul Shamayim Va'arz v'chol tzava'am v'Vayichal Elokim Bayom HaShvi, etc. Then we have Yismuchu b'malchutach. This whole thing, Rabotai, from Ata Kidashta Yom HaShivi, Vayichul Shamayim, Yismuchu b'malchutach, Elokeinu v'Kevoteinu, all this, Rabotai, until you get to the blessing of Baruch Ata Hashem Mikadesh Shabbat. This whole blessing, Rabotai, these rabbis want to learn that if a person went ahead and he davened Shemona Esrei of Aravit, and you said the blessing of Baruch Ata Hashem Mikadesh Shabbat, you have fulfilled your obligation of Kiddush in the Shemona Esrei. According to them, from the Torah, it's not on the wine, it's in the prayer already. So why do we do it on the wine? Same concept. Ve'akiddush ala kos yain habal acher miken, and the kiddush that we're going to do on the cup of wine, which comes afterwards, eina elam midrabanan, it's only from the rabbis. So you're asking yourself a question: what's the difference between these rabbis and the earlier rabbis? Very big difference. So let's do this. Let me just tell you outside. Let's do it inside. According to some Rishonim and some Achronim, the Kiddush on the wine on Shabbat, that is the mitzvah, that is the positive commandment from the Torah, is to do the Kiddush on the wine. That is one opinion. Another opinion holds, no, you don't necessarily need to do the Kiddush. When I say Kiddush, I mean the sanctification. When we say those words of Vayichulo Shamayim, those words, Rabotai, doesn't necessarily have to go on wine, but rather you could do it without the wine. Other Rishonim and Achronim learn, no, from the Torah, a person fulfills his obligation of the commandment of Kiddush, even with words alone, even without having a cup of wine. Nevertheless, the rabbis instituted that we should do it on the cup of wine. And that was opinion number 2. Opinion number 3 is going to learn, and you have some rabbis that wrote that from the Torah, a person fulfills obligation of the mitzvah of the Kiddush in the Shemoneh Esrei itself. So one opinion learns that the mitzvah of the Kiddush has to be done on wine. The second opinion learns the mitzvah of the Kiddush has to be done with words. Doesn't say where. You could say it outside, as we'll see. Another opinion, the third opinion, says no, the Kiddush of Shabbat, once it's said in the blessing of Baruch Atah Hashem Mikadesh Shabbat, once he says that blessing of Shemoneh Esrei, he fulfills obligation from the Torah for the mitzvah of Kiddush. So why do we do it on the cup of wine? That, Rabotai, is only from the rabbis. Why is this important to know? Comes Rav David Yosef and he says, V'lachen, therefore, mi she'en lo yain lekiddush. Interestingly enough, I got a phone call this past week. A person was in a certain place on vacation and he wasn't able to get his hands on wine. He did have bread. He was going to be able to do it on bread. But it happens, Rabotai, you go away, you have bread, but you don't have wine. So what do? But now, again, let's tell the halacha outside. If a person is stuck, he has no wine, and all you have is bread, you're going to do the Kiddush on the bread. How do you do the Kiddush on the bread? You're going to say normal. Just like you say the Kiddush, first you're going to wash your hands of Alns al Yadayim, then you're going to dry it, then you're going to say Vayichulo Shamayim, etc., etc., etc. When you get to the blessing of Savri Maranan, where that blessing you usually would say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Borei Prei Gefen, you're not going to say that blessing, you're going to rather say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Once you say that blessing of Hamotzi, you don't cut the bread yet. Now you continue to the blessing of the Kiddush. Once you say the blessing of the Kiddush and you finish that blessing, then you go ahead and you cut the bread. Same formula that you use for wine, you're going to have to use for the bread. That's going to be the halacha. So these things do come across. So now why is this important for us to know if Kiddush has to be done on a cup, or do I have to merely say it with words, or maybe I even fulfill my obligation in the Shemoneh Esrei? Why is that important to know? Rav David Yosef tells us like this, and therefore, mi she'en lo yain lekiddush, someone who does not have wine for Kiddush, forgot to buy it. V'gam en lo pat lekiddush, but not only that, he doesn't even have bread for Kiddush. Or another scenario, shemak mashu chole, or because chas v'shalom he's not doing well, en yachol lekadesh al hayain or al pat, he's not able to do the Kiddush on the wine or on the bread. He has the wine, he has the bread, but the doctor says he's not allowed to have it. I know somebody told me just recently that he has to have gluten-free bread, or gluten-free bread, I don't know how you say it, okay? He's not allowed to have wheat in the bread. But in this scenario, let's say a person is not allowed to have wine and he's not allowed to have bread. So what is he supposed to do? And there's nobody else over there that is chayav in mitzvot, meaning somebody's over 13 years of age, if he's a boy, or 12 years of age, if she's a girl, that's able to do kiddush on their behalf. What should this person do? Yechaven letzed yedei chovat mitzvot kiddush b'tefillah. He should have kavanah, he should direct doing Shemona Esrei to fulfill his obligation for the mitzvah of kiddush in the Shemona Esrei of Aravit when he's saying Baruch Ata Hashem Mikadesh HaShabbat. V'yotze yedei chova lechol hapachot lefi dat harishonim v'achronim hasovrim sheyotze yedei chovat mitzvot kiddush min haTorah b'tefillah. He says, and he's going to be able to fulfill his obligation at the very least, according to the Rishonim and the Achronim, that hold that the mitzvah of the Kiddush from the Torah is in the Shemona Esrei. And it does have to be done on wine. So if a person knows himself, let's give two scenarios. Scenario number one, you don't have wine and you don't have bread. Scenario number two, you have wine and you have bread. But you're not doing well, you're not allowed to have them. And you have nobody else that's going to be able to go out and do the Kiddush on your behalf. You know that when you're going to go out and daven Shemona Esrei of Aravit that day, in your mind you want to have this kavanah, you want to have this intention. I am going to fulfill my obligation of the mitzvah of the Kiddush from the Torah by saying this blessing of Baruch Ata Hashem Mikadesh HaShabbat. Like I showed you from Ata Kidashta all the way until then, Rabotai, from there till the end of the blessing, Baruch Ata Hashem Mikadesh HaShabbat. From then and on, you're going to have that kavanah that you want to fulfill your obligation in the Shemona Esrei. This is what Rav David Yosef is telling us over here. So let's just, one more time, let's just see this inside. One more time, and then, because the next pieces are something new. V'lachen, therefore, mi she'en lo l'kiddush. V'lachen, therefore, mi she'en lo yain l'kiddush. Somebody who does not have wine for kiddush. V'gam en lo pat l'kiddush, and also he does not have bread for kiddush. Or she'machma she'u chole en yachol l'kiddush al hayain or al hapat, or chas v'sham, because he's not doing well, he's not able to do kiddush on the wine and on the bread. There's nobody else that's going to be able to fulfill his obligation in the kiddush. No problem. Yechaven, very important Rabbota right here. Yechaven letzed dechot mitzvot kiddush b'tefillah. Have intention to fulfill your obligation of the mitzvah of kiddush in the Shemona Esrei. How does that help us? Because we saw opinions that say that with that you are Yotzei, with that you do fulfill the obligation of the mitzvah of Kiddush. ויוצא ידי חובת לכל הפחות לפי דעת הראשונים והאחרונים הסוברים שיוצאים ידי חובת מצוות קידוש מן התורה בתפילה. And to fulfill your obligation at the very least according to the Rishonim and the Achronim that hold that a person is able to fulfill his obligation of the mitzvah of the Kiddush from the Torah in the Shemona Esrei. That's what, Rabotai, it's very important to know what's from the Torah, what's from the rabbis, and so on and so forth. It does make a very big difference. Now, V'Rabotei Poskim, the rabbis that make the Pesach Halacha, Katvu, they wrote, Ladon, to judge the case like this. Im yotzei yedei chovat mitzvot kiddush min haTorah, does a person fulfill the obligation of the mitzvah of the kiddush from the Torah? Kishomer pasukei vayichulu, if he's going to say the verses of vayichulu, in Bereshit Perek Bet Pasuk Aleph through Gimel, or kishomer pasukei v'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbat. That's brought down Shemot Perek Lamed Aleph Pasukim Tezayin Yud Zayin. Rav David Yosef says that the rabbis, they wanted to look into the case, does a person fulfill his obligation of the mitzvah of Kiddush from the Torah if he only said Vayichulu and Vishamru? Let's see this. Let's go back 1 second. Here. If a person went ahead and he said Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'atzot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam brit olam ביני ובין בני ישראל תלון כי ששת ימים עשה את השמה ואת הארץ והיום שבע שבועות והנפש By saying this alone, the rabbis wanted to judge, does a person fulfill the obligation of the mitzvah of the Kiddush from the Torah? Or by saying this, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויכל אלוקים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוקים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שווה מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא, אלוהים לעשות. This is what Rav David Yosef is bringing down. He said there are some rabbis want to know, do you fulfill the obligation for the Kiddush from the Torah by saying Vayichulu and by saying Vishamuru B'nei Yisrael? This is what they went ahead and they took it on. Now, and this is Vishamuru B'nei Yisrael right here, okay? Okay. So again, this they were judging this case. V'katvu od poskim, and furthermore the poskim wrote, Ladon, to judge another case. Im mikayem mitzvah kiddush b'Shabbat ba'amira shafta tava or Shabbat shalom. Rabotai. Another case the poskim wanted to judge. Does a person fulfill the mitzvah of the kiddush by saying shafta tava, meaning good Shabbos? That's in Aramaic. Or by saying Shabbat shalom. If a person says Shabbat shalom alone, they want to judge, does he fulfill his obligation in the midst of Kiddush from the Torah? Rabotai, these are cases that are being judged. Rav David Yosef Shaitan and several Halacha Berurah brings down the sources where you have to go and look it up, but he doesn't. This is how he leaves it at. He just says that there are these questions that have come up, and the rabbis were judging it. Does it help or does not help? But he did not conclude whether it helps or not. Let me see something. Here. I just want to see over here. He says, I'm b'mash katatu b'zeh b'siyata d'shemai b'shut otzrod Yosef b'shebesov Yosef b'shov Siman Gimel b'dibur ha'matchil u'bi'ikar. Okay, Rabotai, so he does bring this down. He brings it down in the Sefer Otzrod Yosef, which is in the back in Siman Gimel. He actually speaks about this if you are yoytze. Let me see something. Siman Gimel. Wow. Okay. Alright, but it's a lot. It's a lot of over here. Okay, I'm not going to get into this right now. Just want to see something. Wow. But it's a few pages that he wrote on this concept. If you fulfill your obligation. Okay. It's a lot, Rabotai. It's at least 10 pages. Only in sources, Rabotai, and explaining. So there is, Rabotai, this case is judged if a person fulfills the obligation by saying Vayichulu, or by saying Vishamru B'nei Yisrael the Shabbat, or by saying Shavtatava, or by saying Shabbat Shalom. There is a whole case discussing this. If you fulfill your obligation for the mitzvah of Kiddush for Shabbat from the Torah just by saying these paragraphs or the words of Shavtatava or Shabbat Shalom. Fine. Nevertheless, and even according to the ones that learn, that hold, that you fulfill your obligation for the mitzvah of the Kiddush from the Torah by speech alone, how should you do it? You need to take out the words with your mouth. You have to be able to make it audible. You have to hear it. It's not enough that you're going to sing the blessing of the Kiddush in your heart. That's not enough. According to the ones that learn that you are able to fulfill your obligation of the mitzvah of the Kiddush from the Torah by mere speech, You have to actually say the words, and it's not enough to go ahead and just think of the words. Continues Rav David Yosef, V'kodem HaKiddush, and before the Kiddush, Minhag Yisrael is the custom of the Jewish people, Lomar Shalom Aleichem Uperik Eshet Chayil. Right? Guys, I'm just going to show it to you. I know a lot of us know this already, but I deal with people that surprisingly, a lot are unaware of what this is. So in the city we like this Shalom Aleichem, right? We sing Shalom Aleichem, and then you have Ba'achem L'Shalom. After that we have Eshet Chayil, right? This is for the wife that we sing for her. So that's what he says. Rav David Yosef is telling us that the minhag of the Jewish people is to say Shalom Aleichem and Eshet Chayil. V'yesh nohagim lomar piyut azemer b'shevichin. Some also say the poem of Azemer b'shevichin. Ve'ot piyutim in other poems shechibur hakidmonim that our early rabbis have instituted, that they have put it together. V'nitbe'aru hadvarim be'orech be'halacha be'rua le'el Siman Reish Samach Bet Siv Bet ve'hal'a. All these halachot rabotai were explained in Siman 262 in Halacha 2 and on. V'sham Siv Tet on over there in Halacha Tet. Nitba'er, it's explained haminhag levarech ala besamim kodma kiddush, that the minhag to bless on the besamim, on the spices, is prior to doing the kiddush. V'sham also over there in Siv Yud nitba'er haminhag lenashek et yedei hahorim belel Shabbat. Over there also in Halacha Yud it explains the custom of kissing the parent's hand on Friday night. So Rabotai, we see over here that again, in all these things, B'ezrat Hashem, if we get to those simanim, we'll do, but he's just telling us that all these things are found over there, and that speaks about that the minhag is to bless on the besamim, on the spices, before you do the kiddush, and that the minhag is to kiss the parents' hands on Friday night. Okay. Rabotai, let's do the review in English. Review. Hashem gave a mitzvah. Hashem gave a message to the Jewish people to remember the Shabbat, to make it holy. That's in Parsha Shemot, Perik 20, Pasuk 8. What does that mean that Hashem gave us a mitzvah on Shabbat to remember to make it holy? This means on Friday night we must say holy words that show Shabbat is special. The rabbi said the best way is to say those words over wine or grape juice. The Torah and Navi use remember with wine, as we saw those two verses which he's going to bring down right now. They will remember it like the wine of Lebanon. In Hosea Perik 14, Pasuk 8. The other Pasuk in Shir HaShirim, in Perik 1, Pasuk 4. We will remember your love more than wine. So we see over here that the word remember and the word wine, over here we have the word remember. And over here we have the word wine. Over here we have the word remember. And over here we have the word wine. So since we have this Rabotai, remember and wine, remember wine, so we know that's why Kiddush is usually done on a cup of wine. Okay, because that's what we want you to remember the day of Shabbat to make it holy. How do you do it? If you want us to remember, how do you do it? On the wine. Why? Because the pasuk in Hosea and Shir HaShirim says, remember it on the wine, remember on the wine. So that's what we're doing it on the wine. That's why Kiddush is usually done on a cup of wine. Now, moving forward, some rabbis say Kiddush on wine is itself a Torah command. Right? That was the first opinion that we saw Rav David Yosef Shuta brought down. That doing the Kiddush on the wine itself is a Torah obligation, Torah command. The second opinion held no. Other rabbis say, from the Torah it's enough to just say Kiddush words, even without wine. The rabbis later added that Kiddush must be said on wine. That was the second opinion. Third opinion, some even say, even if you just say in Tefillah the blessing Mikadesh Shabbat, you already did the Torah part of Kiddush. The wine cup is only rabbinic. Now, why do we have to know if something's rabbinical or biblical? Very important, Rabotai. This plays a very big role. If you don't have wine and don't have challah, or you're sick and can't drink, or you can't eat, what should one do? You should have in mind when saying Kiddush in Tefillah that this is your Kiddush. And with that you fulfill the obligation of Kiddush for Shabbat. According to many rabbis, this fulfills the Torah command. Some rabbis also ask, if someone just says the verses, Vayichulu, which is brought down in Bereshit in Parak 2, verse 1 to 3, or for persons that have Shamru, which is brought down in Shemot in Parak 31, Pasuk 16 to 17, does that count as Kiddush from the Torah? Again, he says to look in the back, he answers that it's a whole case that they take on. Different rabbis had different answers. Others even wonder if you just say Shabbat Shalom or Shabbat Tava in Aramaic, which means good Shabbat, maybe that's also a way of Kiddush. Nevertheless, even according to those who say Kiddush can be just words, not wine, you must say it out loud with your mouth. Just thinking Kiddush in your heart is not enough. The Jewish custom is to say Shalom Aleichem, welcoming the Shabbat angels. Then we say the chapter Eshet Chayil, praising the woman of the house. Some also sing Azamer B'Shevichin and other piyutim written long ago by the sages. Some had the custom to make a blessing on spices before Kiddush, like the smelling of the besamim. Some had the custom that children kiss their parents' hands on Friday night before Kiddush to show honor and respect. Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.